So Richard, we are here in Boston. This is your city, right? I mean, whole world is
No,
your city.
it's not mine.
So it's been so long since we met last time in Belgium. So tell us, first of all, let's start with how much has changed.
Well, I don't remember what year that was.
2000, I think 12.
2012.
Yes.
Wow, that's 6 years. Well, one thing that changed is Edward Snowden told us how much the US government and other governments are spying on everyone. In 2012, when I was concerned about digital surveillance, but if someone, and people did ask me frequently whether I thought the US government was spying on me, I said, I don't suppose so. I don't know of any reason why they would. Now I know that they don't need a reason. They spy on everyone. So they're spying on me, and they're spying on you, and they're spying on everybody who's watching this. That is tremendously dangerous. There is a lot of attention, finally, to the danger of surveillance-based advertising. But that's just one layer of the surveillance that we are subject to. That's one layer which is carried out by businesses for business reasons. But the data, of course, becomes easily available to the state in many countries,
Right.
perhaps almost all. And the result is it helps the state find dissidents and whistleblowers. That threatens democracy. But now we also know that collection of data helps manipulate elections, and that threatens democracy from another direction. But let's look at some of the other kinds of surveillance. Cameras to recognize people's faces or license plates as they go around the city and the street. We've got to put an end to that. And that requires strong measures. No timid things like saying you can use it only by these rules, because those rules always permit enough to put democracy in danger. When the state wants to catch a whistleblower, it will always find a justification for accessing the database and then put the whistleblower in prison and thus discourage people from enabling us to control what our governments do.
Right.
So we've got to go much further than that. We have to limit the data they can collect, not just how it's used. There are other kinds of surveillance that threaten us. For instance, if you're carrying a portable phone, which I refuse to do, then your movements are being tracked, and it can be converted remotely into a listening device,
Right.
which would listen all the time once it's converted. And once it's converted, it won't shut off either,
Right.
because portable phones are not made with off switches. Only a button that says, "Oh, sir, phone, would you please be so kind as to switch off?" And once it's been converted, it becomes a liar. It pretends to switch off, but it's not really off. It just acts to the user as if it were off,
Right.
but it's still listening and transmitting.
Right.
I don't know what happens with airplane mode, whether it actually stops transmitting it when put in airplane mode after it's been converted this way. I would guess it doesn't. I don't think that that the people who make those malicious conversions for the backdoor are paying much attention to laws.
Right.
And then more surveillance. Credit card companies keep track of, they find out from stores what you're buying. And the stores find out who you are also, so they know who's buying what. That's dangerous. To allow stores to know who the customer is a threat. It shouldn't be allowed at all.
You mentioned a couple of points there. You also mentioned the U.S. elections. U.S. is one of the biggest democracies in the world. Is it possible?
Well, it's supposed to be.
I grew up in India, and we have seen the level of corruption and how government wants to have access to data, and technology has given them but in US it was assumed that we have a set of rules, we have check and balances that will keep a tab. But right now what we are seeing is that these technologies are being used to, as you said, even change the outcome of elections. which actually poses even more
Well,
serious.
it's to try to.
Try
we
to.
don't know
We don't
that
know
it actually
because
did.
we don't know.
But there are many other dishonest things that are being done to change the outcome. The corrupter did not win the 2016 presidential election. It was stolen by Republicans. They would have stolen no matter who the candidate was, or at least gone a certain distance towards stealing it.
Right.
And it was only because of that that he was able to apparently win the election. And this theft of the election has been identified in certain states. It was done by blocking, I believe, hundreds of thousands of Americans who should have been allowed to vote from voting. Republicans have various tricks. They're called voter suppression laws. They create excuses to stop lots of people from voting, and those tend to be people who are poor or marginal, in other words, probably will vote Democrat. They know this. And it works pretty well, but it's not democracy.
Right.
Now, a study, which I put a pointer to on Stallman.org somewhere in the political notes in the past couple of years, looked at many different political issues, what public opinion was, and what the decision was, what laws were passed, and found that public opinion had no effect on these decisions since 1998 or so. I don't know whether that was the beginning of their study. There were certainly times, like in the 1970s, when we got laws that the people wanted, even though they were unpleasant for businesses. Clean Air, Clean Water, Endangered Species Act. But nowadays, you can't get that. People understand that the United States doesn't actually practice democracy. It practices an illegitimate form of government called plutocracy. Well, laws chosen by business have no moral authority.
Can you explain plutocracy for our audience? A lot of people who do.
Plutocracy means rule by wealth. And that's what we see.
How many congressmen in our Congress are billionaires and millionaires?
I don't know, but it doesn't matter. The point is, they're not the ones that rule.
Makes the rule.
The people with the money that pay to get them elected are the ones that rule.
But they also end up making money through them.
Well, they do.
Yes.
And a lot of them are millionaires.
Billionaires, yes.
I don't know if any are billionaires.
Our president is billionaire for sure.
You said Congress.
Congress, right? That's true.
I know that many in Congress, perhaps most, are millionaires.
Right.
But I don't know whether very many are billionaires.
Right, that's true.
After all, they're not the bosses. They're the tools, the flunkies. So I don't expect them to get billions, only millions.
That's true. But what went wrong with our country? What happened?
What happened was, starting in the 1970s, rich people took various measures that were successful over a long term to gain power over the United States government. And they operated various levels, sometimes through obvious corruption. They put a Supreme Court justice on, I believe his name was Powell, who advocated that businesses deserved human rights, which is absurd. A corporation is not a human being and doesn't deserve human rights.
You cannot execute a corporation. You cannot put
you can't legitimately execute a human being
either. But you cannot put them in jail. You cannot. Yeah, of course.
Well, you can.
Put the CEO.
You can erase one. You can, dissolve a corporation and hand out its assets to whatever.
Right.
But our government basically doesn't dare do that because it's too much under the thumb of those very big businesses. But you notice that President Reagan gutted antitrust law.
Right.
And what remained of it was eliminated by W. And since then, mergers have gone on like mad, producing oligopolies with very few competitors. But what is interesting is that it's not just that there are only a few sellers in a certain field, it's that there are only a few buyers for labor in many fields. That's called an oligopsony. And the point is that that's pushing wages down.
Right.
Because there aren't a lot of companies to compete to hire people. And I saw in a study that estimated a 16% effect of this. The details are in a political note recently posted in Stallman.org. The point is, what do plutocrats want? They want to keep wages down. So even they want to push productivity up and not pay workers any more for it. And that's what they've been doing since the 1970s. That's why the minimum wage hasn't been raised. That's why they have been working to crush unions in many different ways. You see, they have many tactics, but they add up to the same thing. You don't get paid much. If you're out of work, you don't get much help. They want the workers that aren't needed to be in the cemetery.
Right.
And they've been very effective at this, but now what we see is lots of people are aware of this and they're trying to fight back. If, and I'm one of them, and if we succeed in organizing ourselves, we'll undo what the plutocrats have done. It is possible, I believe, to restore democracy in the United States and make those plutocrats pay a lot of money in taxes so that we can have a decent country again where things work. Now, this is the way to make America great again.
Do you see any hope there?
I see some hope, but that doesn't mean we can't lose.
Where does the
It
hope come
depends
from?
on everyone who can help in this. Every American who wants democracy, who wants a decent country where people who work get paid and people who can't work get help, you've got to join in this fight. You've got to support progressive candidates. Look at the primary elections for the Democratic Party. See if there's a progressive candidate, because a lot of Democrats are toys of the plutocrats too.
Right, yeah.
Just because someone's a Democrat, that doesn't mean that person is worth voting for.
Right.
Like Hillary Clinton, just like her husband, we're not worth voting for. When I saw what Clinton did after he was elected, I decided I'm not going to vote for him again. And that's what I've thought about every Democratic presidential candidate ever since. Hillary Clinton is even worse than Bill Clinton because she's a militarist too.
Yes.
And so when I saw that she was running, I decided I'm certainly not going to vote for her. And then, interestingly, I tried to go to Harvard Bookstore one evening, but it was closed because she was having a book signing there. And there was a line of people outside waiting to get a book and have it signed. So I shouted to the people on the line, when I was young, we had a name for politicians like Clinton, Republicans. And so even if she calls herself a Democrat, I'm never going to vote for her. She's too right-wing for me.
Right, that's true.
And if you want to vote for a woman, why not vote for the progressive one, Jill Stein, who was the Green Party candidate that I actually voted for.
I thought you were endorsing, not endorsing, but Bernie Sanders. Because
Well, I
I
did,
saw a
but
picture.
that was what during the
Yeah,
primaries.
I also voted for him, but when it didn't happen, then
Right. Well, the point is, of course, I supported Sanders in every feasible way until he lost.
I don't know if
And
it lost
then-
or it was just the way Republicans stole the election. DNC,
No.
DNC stole from.
Well, the DNC was biased, and the leaks proved that. And then Donna Brazile, I don't know how to pronounce her name correctly, but she admitted that the DNC was biased. Not too long after the Democratic convention, I posted a petition on Move On, I think, addressed to Hillary Clinton, calling on her to step aside, saying that she didn't support what America needs, didn't support what Democrats want, and she was losing.
And a lot
So-
of, yes, you're right.
I only got 7 signatures on this petition,
To
but
be honest with you, I think a lot of Democrats did not go out and vote because of her, because they were so demoralized. They were discouraged, so they did not go. So I don't know what role Russia played, but I'm certain that because of Hillary Clinton also,
Yeah.
it demoralized.
right. I mean, it's outrageous that Russia tries to manipulate U.S. elections.
You don't
but
have
that's, well, I mean, it might have made some difference.
Yes.
That's not the point. The point is that there were lots of reasons why Clinton
Yes.
would have made a bad president
Right, that's true.
and didn't deserve our support. Now, I got fed up with voting for the lesser evil because, as others pointed out and
It's
I
still
read
evil.
and recognized is true, voting for the lesser evil gets you more evil and more evil every time.
Yeah, because you are just lowering the bar, lowering the bar, lowering
Right,
the bar.
exactly.
So in the end, all you will get up with evil people. There won't be any good because that's
Right.
your bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I have hope that Sanders will win next time. But I also have hope that progressives
Yes.
will win in November and stop the corruptor from doing a lot of the nasty stuff he does. I have various names to call him. The reason I prefer not to use his name is that he's a narcissist and he likes to see people using his name.
Right, right.
So I'm denying him a pleasure. It's not a taboo. I can say Trump, you know. I can say that what he does is Trumpery. But I prefer usually to call him by a more descriptive name.
What is that name?
Which one? Well, various ones. Sometimes the bully. Sometimes the infant.
Yeah.
Sometimes the troll.
Oh yeah, I mean, we can use a lot of other names, but we won't use on camera. Do you think that technology can play any role in improving the situation or not?
Well, it is to some extent. People are spreading the word about organizing using some digital technology, and including some evil digital technology like Facebook.
So while we have kind of changed the gears to technology, nowadays technology is just a tool. You know, it can be used to kill somebody or it can be saved somebody. You started a movement a couple of years ago, which has also celebrated, silver.
Well, I started it 35 years ago,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
Almost 35.
Yeah.
like
So
34 and a half.
can you talk about those four principles that drove the?
Well, that's actually anachronistic. At the beginning, when I started the free software movement, I had a simple idea. Users should be free to share and change the software they use. Nowadays, I know how to explain this. It's a matter of giving users the control over the software they use. And that's a matter of separate control and collective control. Separate control means you're free to change the software you use, which means you've got to get the source code, and then you're free to use it any way you like. But separate control is not enough because most users are not programmers, and they deserve control over their computing too. How can they have it? Through collective control, which means that the users of a program control what it does, and they can work together to exercise that control so that we're not limited to making all the changes we want separately, each user making the same changes if they want the same changes.
Right.
No. Collective control means that you're free to collaborate with other users that want to collaborate with you. And then together you make the program do what you want. And these kinds of control are there in parallel all the time. So a group can make some changes. You can participate in that, help decide what changes to make. But then if the group's version doesn't do all the things you want, you could make some other changes, or you could find other people who want to make another change, and that would be another group, and thus using collective control. But you can always make individual changes in your copy,
Right.
and you can offer that to others. So To give users these 4 freedoms requires the 4 essential freedoms. I didn't work those out until some years after I'd started the movement. The 4 freedoms are freedom 0, freedom to run the program any way you wish for any purpose. Freedom 1 is freedom to study the source code and change it so the program does your computing activity the way you wish. And the source code is essential for this freedom to be more than a sham. And those 2 freedoms are needed for separate control. And for collective control, freedom 2 is the freedom to make exact copies. Sorry, I'm a bit sleepy. Freedom 2 is the freedom to make exact copies so as to give them or sell them to others when you wish.
Right.
And freedom 3 is to make copies of your modified versions and give or sell them to others when you wish.
Right.
So free software refers to freedom, not price. Making copies and selling them is something everyone's welcome to do.
That has created a lot of confusion when we go out and talk to people. They often say that, oh, free software means I should not pay, but I think that
I understand it's a misunderstanding.
Right.
English doesn't give us a good word for this. So sometimes I will add the word libre, which is a French or Spanish word pronounced as if it were English. And in those languages, it means free as in freedom. It doesn't mean zero price.
Right. So it's okay to make money from free software. It's just like any other.
More power to you.
More
if
power.
you make money contributing to society in an ethical way, not mistreating people, fine.
Right.
I don't believe in stopping anyone from making money. I don't believe that we should all have the same amount of money or anything like that. I believe we shouldn't let anyone suffer in poverty. We should help those people. But that's far away from saying we should level everything. So I don't want to get rid of business. I just want to get rid of the businesses that mistreat people and do injustice to people. And that's what non-free software does.
Right.
Because when the users don't have the 4 freedoms, then the users don't control the program. Instead, the owner controls the program, and the program controls the users. So that program is an instrument of unjust power. It shouldn't exist. Developing it is doing evil, and we should put an end to it.
So if you look at it from a different perspective, does that also mean that companies who are either offering services around free software or selling free software, they are more ethical companies, their employees
They
should
certainly
be
are more ethical, because there's nothing obviously unjust in the nature of their business. Whereas with a proprietary software company, it's basically offering you something that will give that company power over you. That software shouldn't exist. That company shouldn't be doing that. But now that's just the basic injustice of non-free software. Nowadays, they typically add other secondary injustices, malicious functionalities. That's standard practice nowadays. When I started the free software movement in 1983, malware was rare. Sure, a non-free program was an injustice, but it probably wasn't coded to mistreat you as well. Nowadays, it probably is coded to mistreat you as well.
It's a feature. More or less.
Well, it's a feature as far as the developer is concerned. They have no shame. They frequently, they even admit that they're doing malicious things.
I'll give you an example. Like Apple's iOS, with the previous version, they added a button earlier when you switch, as you actually mentioned it, that when you do that, so it was a button where you put it's a virtual button, it turns the Wi-Fi off. Now, with the latest update, when you turn it off, it doesn't turn the Wi-Fi off. You have to go deeper in the UI. That's where the toggle switch is. So a user may think, hey, you know what? I have turned the Wi-Fi off.
Tricks the users into being surveilled.
Yeah, you think, oh, I have turned the Wi-Fi off, so it's saving my battery, or it's not, but it's not. So it's
well, if it were free software, the users could correct that.
Correct that, yeah.
This is why free software typically doesn't have malicious functionalities. Because not only that the users could correct them if they were there, but that the developers know the users could correct them, and this deters them from even thinking about trying to mistreat the users.
Right. I mean, there have been some effort. I think the last time we talked about Ubuntu also, where now it's a long time, but where they tried to put ads in the
Yes.
yes.
Well,
So
not only that, but the search feature on the desktop gave I can't remember which company it was anymore, data about what the user was searching for, and gave Ubuntu some data too. And I condemned Ubuntu for this, and eventually they made that no longer be the default.
right.
But you see, Ubuntu is an example of a big problem in our community, which is GNU/Linux distros developed by people that don't care about freedom, don't even use the term free software. You'll notice Ubuntu only talks about open source. The term open source was coined in 1998 by people who liked free software but rejected our ideals of freedom. They wanted a way to cut the programs away from the philosophy.
Right.
And open source was their way. By using the term open source and never saying free software anymore, they were able to disconnect our entire practical activity from the philosophical demand for freedom.
And it was very tightly coupled. That was the whole point, to give the freedom to the code.
Well, the
Code
point
was
is, people who heard them
right.
didn't hear anything about freedom or right or wrong. You see, the idea of the free software movement is it's wrong for a program to be non-free. It's an injustice. It shouldn't exist. Software should respect people's freedom.
Right.
Software developers have an obligation, a moral obligation, to respect users' freedom. That is what open source discarded and buried. So they said, if you're developing a program, think about whether it's in your practical self-interest to let users change and redistribute the program, because they might contribute to it, they might improve the code quality. So what's gone is the idea that the users have rights that software developers are bound to respect.
Right.
But that's the crucial idea. This is why I reject association with the term open source. You have a choice, of course, in what you say, and everyone else does too. People who value this freedom can support our cause by saying free Libre software, and people who disagree with it can work against our cause by saying open source.
Right.
And people have the right to do whatever, to say whatever their views, whatever views they want to express. But if you agree with us, please show people. You're not helping us just by thinking it inside, but when you express it, then you're helping us.
Right.
Now, I started to talk about the malicious functionalities, but I didn't get through more than one. I think, actually, I didn't get through any of them. I didn't get to state what they were. Well, there's spying on the user, very common. Windows, Mac OS, Android, iOS, and Chrome OS, all spying on the user. Lots of applications spying on the user. Many applications require users to identify themselves, and it's hard to give a fake name because you may have to give your credit card as well, and they'll get the name off that.
You have to log into your account, online account, before using most of these devices. You cannot even use them.
Exactly. Well, you could, in theory, you could give a false name to the online account. Of course.
But it is attached to your friends, then you will not be able to send emails.
Well, I would if I connected to some other email site with a different name.
Yes.
But yeah, the way it's set up to work is to surveil everything.
Everybody. By default, by design.
Yeah. And by the way, the terms and conditions for a Google account include things that I would never agree to. I should double check what they are and write an article about that. But beyond just surveillance, many applications and also programs in appliances are tied to a particular server, and the only way you can fully use them is by connecting through that server. The first example I heard of was the Fitbit, that it sends the user's personal data
Yes.
to the manufacturer, which offers to sell the data to the user whose data it is.
Did you hear the case where U.S. military people, they were abroad?
They were tracked through their Fitbits.
They were tracked. So those locations were never disclosed, the bases. Now everybody knows.
Yeah. Well, even an evil thing can occasionally backfire and have
Backfires,
good results. But that doesn't excuse the Fitbit,
Right.
The Fitbit is an outrage. People shouldn't use that. But there are many other such products.
Let me address one, because there will be so many points. Let me address one point at a time. When you say law, you have to terms agreement. Should there be a law that sometime I have seen is smart TVs where you turn a smart TV on, so-called smart TV. If you disagree to the terms and conditions, you cannot even use the TV just as a dumb box.
Right.
So
Well,
should there
that
be?
should be evil. That's evil. It shouldn't be allowed.
No, that's what I say. Should there be some? We cannot expect from this administration, but some things are happening in
Yes,
Europe.
that should be allowed. Sorry, that should be illegal.
Illegal. I should be able to use the device by declining the terms and conditions or doing
Yes.
tracking.
Well, I would never agree to them.
Exactly. So, but a user should be able. It should not be the case.
Yes,
Either you
but
don't
not only
use
that, a cable box nowadays
yes.
is spying on the user.
Right,
That
yes.
should be illegal too.
Yes.
An ISP should be forbidden by law to take note of what internet connections a user makes.
Right.
Unless there's a court order to do tracking to a particular line.
But these technologies are also helping these surveillance states. So they see a vested interest instead of regulating them. They can be.
Well, this is part of plutocracy,
Right, exactly.
and tyrannical rule.
Right.
But that doesn't legitimize it,
No.
of course. In any case, I want to mention the other...
One more case before we move to, you mentioned mobile phones and everything. These days we are also seeing Tesla cars. They are actually, computers on wheels, where you go.
The other cars are. A connected car is being tracked everywhere through its mobile phone.
No, the worst case with Tesla could be, what I see is that, let's say you want to go to a protest, right? A protest is happening. Tesla will not drive you because it has the power to stop the car.
Right. That's
or
true.
if you did not pay the bill, they have the right.
Even worse, with a self-driving car,
that's what
if there is a back door, and there will be a back door,
there will be.
They could send a command saying, take this person to the secret police.
No, that's what I'm saying. Tesla has the self-driving capability. Tesla.
Well, yes and no. Not now. There is a steering wheel.
Yes.
I don't know if a Tesla can forcibly take you somewhere with the doors locked.
It's self-driving car. You don't have to touch the wheel. That's why all the accidents are happening. Is you don't have to touch the car. It has the auto.
The autopilot doesn't drive the car on its own. It insists on things like staying in the lane. Is what I've heard.
Elon Musk gave the demo when he announced the car earlier that you are standing outside the car. You push the button on your phone, and the car open the garage. The car will come out. And it will, it's just minor tweak. You sit in the car. I have seen a lot of videos where the guy just sits there. The car drives them around. It's not the cruise mode. It's autonomous driving mode. So as the technology develops further, there are more risks that you cannot. And as you are using more and more these technologies.
Right. Well, we have to forbid this.
No,
it's too dangerous to allow.
I look at it two ways. As a science fiction writer, there are two ways. Either we forbid it, or we become so active participants that we become the vector of change or influence.
We can only do that if it's free software. If the car has no outside connection, then it can't be given remote commands. If the car can't identify its passenger, then it's safe for us against surveillance. Suppose there's a self-driving taxi, but it can't tell who the passenger is, and it can't get any commands to go there instead of the other place, and then it could be safe. It's as safe as a taxi driver. But if it knows who the passenger is, it's dangerous. And if it could be remotely told to go somewhere else, it's dangerous. There are people who buy cars now that have a tracking facility. It's a cellular modem.
Right.
One of my friends disconnected the cellular modem.
You cannot drive the car anymore.
Yes, you can.
You can?
Sure he can.
Okay.
He does drive it.
Okay.
He bought it. He looked up in the plans where the cellular modem is. He unscrewed it. Now he drives, but the car can't tell anything about him. Digital restrictions management means the program is designed to refuse to do what you tell it to do.
Right.
That's a malicious functionality. I believe that people who design such software should go to prison for a long time. Or design or distribute or import or whatever to get others to use software that's designed to chain them should go to prison. Another thing is a backdoor of any kind. For instance, the Amazon Swindle, Amazon's ebook reader, is designed with a backdoor for erasing books. In 2009, Amazon remotely erased thousands of copies of a particular book
Right.
in a giant Orwellian act. And what was the book? It was 1984 by George Orwell.
Right.
So, obviously, a backdoor is malicious. Its purpose is to do something harmful or nasty to the user. If the thing they wanted to do were not harmful or nasty, they would make it a feature and let users do it when they want to. Then there is censorship. Apple started censorship of apps. The iPhone was the first general purpose computer in which users could only install approved applications. Apple practiced this censorship power arbitrarily, according to its business interests and its political stands, until last year, when Apple was shocked to realize that it was compelled to censor for China. Of course, the Chinese state is tyrannical and oppressive. And one thing it does to oppress the Chinese people is ban VPNs. China ordered Apple to ban VPN applications, and China did. So soon lots of states will order Apple to censor for them. And the reason Apple has to do it is that it gave itself censorship power in the first place. If the iPhone couldn't restrict what apps users install, then Apple would be able to say, well, look, you're talking to the wrong people. We can't control what users install. And China would have had to accept that. But because Apple gave itself this censorship power, now it's the flunky of China. Apple is the flunky of China. And then there are universal backdoors, which means a backdoor with the power to impose changes in the code. Windows has a universal backdoor. First detected in Windows XP, it allows Microsoft to forcibly change the code in any way at all. So Windows has zero security against Microsoft. When Microsoft did not acknowledge that Windows XP had this backdoor, but with Windows Vista, it announced proudly the presence of this backdoor. But instead of calling it a universal backdoor, Microsoft called it auto upgrade, which is a nice sounding name for the same malicious functionality. What do you expect if you're using non-free software? It's malicious. Most of it is malicious, but all of it puts you at the mercy of the developer and creates an enormous temptation for developers to make the software malicious, which is why it so often is malicious. Once you basically surrender totally to the power of some company, what's it going to do? It's going to mistreat you. So if you want software you can have any chance of trusting, it's got to be free software. And that's why I absolutely refuse to have any non-free software installed in my computer. So anyway,
these are some malicious features you're talking
yes.
about. Okay.
If you want to see a list of them, Look at gnu.org/malware. We have hundreds of examples listed there.
Right. Have you heard of Amazon Key?
Oh, right. That's where you make a key available so delivery people can open the door. Is that it?
There is no physical key. You install a smart lock in front of your house, and then the delivery people just walk into your house without you even knowing. So, because you're talking on a Kindle where they can delete.
I call it the swindle.
They can delete
it's
that.
the same kind of stupidity,
But this is
right?
the next level, and a lot of people have bought it. And a few months ago, there was a demo where a developer gave a demo that anyone, a delivery guy can enter your house, and when you have somebody has key to enter your house, imagine. When the law enforcement authorities, they want backdoor in iPhone, won't they want backdoor in your actual key?
I'm sure they will.
ICE will.
Although, there are strict rules by which they could get in trouble if they used that to get into your house without having a warrant.
Right. We know, but what if you don't even get to know there was someone in your house?
That's true. They could sneak in, search your house, and then make a parallel construction to give them an excuse to charge you and never admit what they did. It's illegal, but you can't expect them to obey laws.
If they were obeying the laws, we won't be having this discussion today. So there are a lot of things are happening today which are even more dangerous than we initially thought. Okay, this is something that I know this is something sensitive, but when I started my own journey, since then, I'm using the word that you don't like it, but I'm using just to give the context. These days, everybody's talking about open source. Everybody's, even Microsoft, day before yesterday, they announced Azure Sphere OS, which is running Linux. So I asked them. Linux the kernel, and they are customized. So I asked them very clearly that since Linux the kernel is released on the GNU GPL version 2, will you also be releasing the source code? And so they say, yeah, we'll comply with all the licenses that goes.
Well, that's good. See, that program is free software.
Yes.
It's released under a free software license I wrote, which requires redistributors to respect the freedom of users, and Microsoft is even going to respect the user's freedom with regard to that particular program. Well, I'm glad about that. I, however, have to acknowledge that the people who coined the term open source as a reaction against the free software movement have done us a lot of harm. Until 1998, as our software, including the GNU/Linux operating system, spread, it made people aware of our ideas, not with 100% effectiveness, but sometimes it did. But in 1998, they coined the term open source to disconnect our software from our ethical ideas. And they were fairly effective at that. Since then, we have to work hard to teach people, even the users of our software, that there's such a thing as the free software movement, that it's a movement for their freedom, that this is not just a matter of more convenient, more reliable software. I mean, those are secondary desirable things, but they're not as important as freedom. Freedom is crucial. So we do the work. We continue teaching people about the free software movement. We no longer get help from our software as much, but we still do it. The people who started this, the people who started open source, they hoped that we would feel pressured to use the term open source too. And if I had been thinking in a short-term way, I would have done it. But I realized that if I did that, our ideas would be totally buried. But that if I continued to say free software and use it to distinguish our ideas from theirs, at least we would have a way of getting known, making our ideas known to people. And so I'm sure I did the right thing when I decided I would not use the term open source.
The reason I was building the content was two. Number one, how do you feel that Microsoft, a company which was kind of proprietary, now they are going to release something which has GNU GPL version 2?
Well, but it's just the beginning. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of non-free
But do you
software in
feel
whatever
do you
they
feel
release.
happy or good about it?
I see it as a small step. Remember, the goal is kick non-free software out of your life, kick it out of our society. We should all be free.
Right.
So when you compare this step with that goal, I see it as a small positive step.
Right. Now, the second part of the question was that the reason I gave the example was, and once again, was I'm using quote unquote open source term that everybody using it. What is the reason that while quote unquote open source has become so pervasive, but free software, the term or the ideology is still kind of, what has been the reason?
Well, there's a reason for that, which is quite clear, which is that we stand for a controversial ethical position, which open source threw away. So for the businesses that disagree with the ethical ideas of free software, that want to control the users in various ways and impose malicious functionalities on them, they can say open source without embarrassing themselves with a contradiction. But if they talk about free software and freedom, and then they don't respect that freedom, they will be enmeshed in the contradiction between what they say and what they do. This is why the companies in the community were so quick to switch to say open source.
Yes.
Most of them.
Right. Do you see any scope or possibility of changing the situation?
I don't expect it to change drastically, but we do inform more people about the idea of free software.
I mean, any drive where people, because these days the political landscape is changing. We are seeing a lot of movements, positive movements, whether it's the equality or whatever. So do you see there can be a possibility as millennials are coming in?
There's a possibility, but because open source blocked us off from most of the media, our ability to take advantage of it is limited.
Okay.
But people are somewhat getting the word.
And what is the situation? How sustainable is Free Software Foundation these days?
Oh, our members are increasing gradually, our income is increasing gradually. So on that score, we're doing okay.
And okay, this is not a question that I want to ask, but what after Richard M. Stallman, what will happen to Free Software Foundation?
I won't see it.
Yeah, but have you ensured that there are people?
I can't. I don't know a person to recommend as my successor. I wish I did, but what can I do?
Do you? I mean, what do you feel about it? This is your legacy. This is your.
Sorry, it's a meaningless question.
No, the reason is meaningless question for you, but the thing is, the word needs the word.
I'm sorry, I'm unable to do what I can't do. It's no use asking me how I feel about it. That won't help me do anything. If I could find someone sufficiently steadfast to recommend, I would. In fact, I might do more than recommend that person. I would try to give that person experience and firm that person up.
Any other topic you want to touch upon? I have so many things, but any other topic?
Well, there are two big areas of harm that we've seen. One is the surveillance.
Yes.
And the other is mobile devices. Computing on mobile devices is, well, it's even worse than computing on PCs was in the 1980s, because they do so many things to make it hard for us to liberate them. Before mobile devices, it wasn't very hard to write a different operating system and run it on your machine. Now there are obstacles. And before mobile devices, you would install a few general purpose application programs, and each one you would use to do many different things, at least potentially. And so we could replace them with other general purpose applications. They didn't need to be hundreds of thousands of them. We only needed them to be dozens or maybe hundreds. We did that. But now that each company, each organization makes its own app, it's proprietary, it spies on people, and it's talking to a server through a secret protocol. So we can't replace those. The only thing we can do is say no to them. But now the World Wide Web has been thoroughly broken by JavaScript. The World Wide Web initially was a declarative protocol for expressing presentations of information, hypertext. So the website would send the hypertext to your computer and your browser would show it to you. So once we got a free browser and a free web server program, okay, you could browse the web in freedom. But when the site has JavaScript code, which is essentially code that's sent in the web pages to be run on your computer in your browser, well, that means the communication between the site and the user is no longer in a standard declarative protocol. It's just sending arbitrary programs to run on your machine, and of course nobody should be able to send programs to run on your machine. That takes away your freedom, and a lot of them spy on people. So we just have to block the non-free JavaScript code. If the JavaScript program carries a free license, well, with a little improvements in browsers, we could make it convenient for users to maintain their modified versions of those programs and start getting the benefits of freedom, like making sure it doesn't spy or mistreat you. But when the JavaScript program is non-free, and often it's compiled, you could say view source, but what you see is actually a compiled program, not source. So I would say that it has destroyed the World Wide Web and turned it into a proprietary program delivery system.
Right.
To resist this, the crucial thing is make sure your website runs if the user is not running JavaScript. And there is never a reason why you need to make the user run JavaScript. I'm told that JavaScript programs can make certain interface constructs look nicer. Well, if you send free JavaScript code for those limited purposes, then your site will still work even if JavaScript's turned off, and they won't do any great harm. Put a free software license on them and it's okay. But beyond that, you shouldn't make your site use JavaScript.
You mentioned mobile phones.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people are using IoT devices, which are even worse.
Well, I won't use that term.
I know, that's what I always wait for you to give me some terms.
I talk about the Internet of stings, cheaters, and spies and telemarketers.
So in the Internet of Things, they are becoming so pervasive. I mean, these, whether it's thermostats or the doorbells.
You don't have to have, most houses don't have them.
Most houses do have them. It's going to be a $13 billion industry. I cover Internet of Things, so it's a big, massive industry.
People should not buy any of those things.
Yeah, I understand your
The
point.
only computerized appliances you should use are those with free software that talk only to your computer. That's what it takes for them to be ethical. A very limited purpose device, you may not care whether it has software in it. If the software is never going to be upgraded and it can't talk to anything except your controller, it doesn't matter to you whether it's software or a circuit, they're equivalent. So if you get a controllable light bulb and it talks to a controller and the controller is run by free software, you don't have to care what's in the light bulb. But other than that, these devices are malicious and dangerous and unjust. Anything that can have non-free software in it and talk to the internet is an injustice.
Most of these devices run on Linux kernel.
It doesn't matter if they've got some free software. What matters is whether they have some non-free software, because that's enough to put a malicious feature into.
Right, that is the easy answer. But as I said, the market is growing. The answer that I'm looking from you is that What can we do instead? In
Don't
addition,
buy them is what you can do. I'm serious. We have to develop the strength to say no. People who haven't got the courage to say no and make it firm are going to surrender their freedom.
let me give you an example.
Businesses are great, are expert at manipulating people into the point where it will take firmness to say no. And at that point you lose unless you have courage, unless you have firmness.
Some people see a lot of advantages of these devices.
People who think that practical advantages are more important than freedom are going to lose their freedom. So I'll stop thinking about what they think. To hell with them. If they are ready to give up their freedom, I can't stop them. I'm going to talk to the people who value freedom enough to make a sacrifice for it.
Let's take example of a big giant boat. Okay, there are 100 people in that boat. Out of those 100 people, 70 people are poking a hole in that boat. You are one guy who says, no, I will not poke a hole, and you have 20 people with you.
What's your point?
The point is that if the boat is going to sink with rest of them, I am going to sink too. So how can I, and those people are not going to stop. So what
I am going to get out of that boat if necessary.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do my damnedest to convince people to fight for their freedom, and if I lose, I will protect myself as much as I can. I won't have any of those devices in my house.
I'm looking at a different solution. Let's look at airlines or airplane, okay? We trust the airplane, but because of regulations, because of technologies, because of pressure, we have made it secure. So can there be a way that we can use this?
I'm not talking about security,
I'm
please.
not, I'm just giving,
I'm sorry.
Can you let me build the context?
We're totally miscommunicating.
I'm not talking about that security. Can you let me build the context,
Yeah.
please? So what I'm saying is that, is there a way through free software, or as you said in the beginning, that the companies who do free software work are more ethical than the, so I'm talking all this because of some context. I'm not jumping at you. So you have to listen to me. You have to listen to me also.
I understand.
You have to listen to me. Listen to me too. So what I'm saying is that, is there any way that from the technology perspective, we can use free software, at the same time, we can also build companies who believe in free software, so even if they do deploy these IoT devices or more, they are ethical companies, they are not stealing, they are not spying on you.
I don't know. I'm not.
Have you heard of a company called
businessman.
Purism?
Yes.
What do you think about them?
I'm not a businessman.
What do you think about
Please
Purism?
don't change the subject
I'm not
now.
changing the subject.
They're not building these Internet of Things devices as far as I know.
They're building mobile
the
phone.
laptop.
They're building mobile phone.
Yes. Please, I can't answer these questions in fragments. You've asked a different question, and you asked, first of all, but is it possible to... You raised the issue of the Internet of Things, and then as I tried to answer it, you said other things which make it hard for people to see what I'm saying. And now you're trying to change to a different question.
I'm not
I
changing.
can't do that.
I understand. I don't think I'm changing it.
I've got to do one at a time. Let me finish with the Internet of Things.
Okay, let's do that.
You're basically asking the question, can you, one person, stop this disaster? And the answer is, obviously I can't unless other people join in. Okay? I'm not trying to claim to have the powers of a Superman. I'm only telling people about a danger, hoping that they will join in resisting it. But your question effectively assumes that that's not good enough. Either I am so strong that I can defeat the
You started
threat,
free software
or
movement.
I can't.
You have.
Well, the point is, how big is the free software movement? That depends on the people who are watching this. They can either join in or not. They can either say no to the non-free devices that are normally malicious in the Internet of Things or not. Most Internet of Things products that I see being offered to consumers are malicious. They talk to the manufacturer's server, which uses them to spy on the customers that buy the products. If you have any sort of self-respect, it should be obvious to you that you don't want that in your house, and you won't let it be in your house. You'll kick it out. But, how many people can I convince? That's up to them. So let's not waste time on an imponderable. We don't know what the viewers of this interview will think. That's up to them. So why should we waste any time asking about it? they'll show us what they think. So I'm more interested in providing them with reasons to think what I'm arguing for, and I may convince some. There is a sex toy which was designed to be controlled remotely over the internet. And that has some nice uses, right?
I did not use it, so I don't know.
Well, I haven't either, but I can envision uses that might be enjoyable. If they're lovers who are not physically near each other, they might find this an enjoyable thing to do. But the only way to send commands to it is through the server belonging to the manufacturer. So I wasn't surprised to find out that the server is spying on the users all the time, and they even built the product for spying. It wasn't an afterthought. It's not that they built it and then they decided to keep track of the data. No, they built it to give them more data. They put in a thermometer, so it will tell them if the product is in contact with a human body. It might even tell them how much contact and what kind of contact. So they designed it for the purposes of spying on people. That should be a crime. Well, this made a scandal to some extent. I don't know whether they're still selling that product. When I saw that product, my first thought was, you can't trust this thing. I don't want it. If people teach themselves to say, whenever they see such a thing, you can't trust that, I won't take it, then we can defeat those things. Now, I see a possibility that the business devices, the things sold, say, for offices and factories, might be better. It's possible that the controllers sold for factories only talk to another, or for offices, only talk to the master controller in the office. And then if they put free software in those, they control it. And if it's not talking to the internet, then at least it's not spying on them. Maybe, in other words, maybe the manufacturers treat businesses better because the businesses have more money.
Right.
But I don't know that that's true. I do know that the examples I've heard of have been in consumer products.
Yes, they call it IoT or industrial Internet of Things. Yes, you're right. They have a totally different mechanism, and it's more controlled.
Maybe it's more ethical. I have no information about it.
It is because I did some stories in past, and where I talked to people, and you're right about those devices. They are much more controlled than consumer
Good
devices.
for those businesses then.
Yes.
They deserve control over their computing, and you and I deserve control over our computing. So I fight for all users of computing to have control over their computing, and it looks like it's going to be a long fight.
So if businesses can have that control, why can't we?
Oh, it's because the manufacturers think they can get away with more mistreatment of individuals. I think the individuals are going to be suckers.
And that is what I was trying to drive in the beginning, that even with IoT device, Internet of Things devices, there can be ways, just the way businesses don't get tracked, even consumers don't get tracked.
Well, it would certainly be possible to make an ethical device, an ethical computerized appliance, or an ethical thing to control your computerized appliances. But it's not enough to have some free software in there. For instance, if Linux, the kernel, is in there, that doesn't make it ethical.
Right.
Because the criterion is all the software free software? And have you got the source, free software has delivered to you, so you've got all the source code. But there's another problem that happens with these devices, which is they tend to have lousy security. The companies that make them ship one model for a short time and then forget about it. They don't try to maintain the software they delivered. And the users, even when it is free software, the users are not set up to maintain it.
Right.
They're changing the models too fast. We have to change that, and I'm not sure how. But I would guess that those devices also have some software that's not free. And that makes it clearly unjust. There are a few exceptions where all the software is free. There, for instance, there's a Wi-Fi hub called, I think, the Libra CMC, which is runs with free software, and people do upgrade it.
Yes.
You see, free software is the necessary prerequisite for trying to maintain good computing security. And now I'm using security in the standard sense. With non-free software, you can't even try. But just having free software doesn't guarantee good security. Free software has bugs, just as non-free software has bugs.
Right.
Maintaining good security is very hard. But at least you've got to be in a position to try, which means reject the non-free software, which you're not allowed to patch,
Right.
not allowed to debug. It's basically security is hopeless there.
Right. And there has been a lot of discussion even in the internet Sting space that either through regulation or laws that a consumer should be able to put their own free software on those devices. So even if the vendor either goes out of business or is not interested, at least I should be able to maintain and manage it.
Of course, now I wouldn't wait for the vendor to go out of business or cease to be interested
They'll
in
do
that
the
product. I'd want
very
the
first
free
day.
software from the first day,
Yes.
or I wouldn't have the thing.
Yes.
I would distrust it.
Yeah, but it's like one step at a time. That's
right.
what I
Well,
mean.
sure. I mean, if they did that, that would to some extent redeem it, although I would still stay away from those things. Once I was staying in a house where there was an Alexa device. I unplugged it. I didn't want it listening to me. I don't trust it at all.
Yes. Did you hear the case where Amazon handed over Alexa to the law enforcement authorities? There was a murder case. So that also means that maybe even if it says that when you use the hot word Alexa, it starts listening, then what is the point? Why are you giving that device to law enforcement?
Well, I don't know what it means to give the device.
Give the device means that it may have captured audio. That
I
means
see. So they handed it over in case it had captured some commands.
Amazon knows that what it's not free software, so Amazon knows what it captures or not captures.
Right.
So,
well, the things that follow the word Alexa, they're transmitted to Amazon servers, right? So Amazon might have handed over that data from its own servers. I don't want Amazon to get any data from me.
I don't trust them at all. And I don't even know whether they are listening and capturing all the time and then using machine learning capability, they just start.
I don't know.
Yes.
I don't want them to get any data from me. This is why I say what we need in order to take a real bite out of massive surveillance is laws that systems have to be designed not to accumulate data about people.
Right.
We have to limit the collection of data, not merely regulate how it will be used.
Yes. And users should have total control. If you are willing to compromise, but if I don't want, at least I should.
No, actually, no. Systems should not be allowed to ask you for excessive data. Any service that's offered should be required by law to be designed to ask for the least possible data for that service.
Right.
In other words, the user's consent is not an excuse for spying on people. This principle is necessary because companies have become adept at manufacturing consent. Now, I'm deliberately taking a term that Chomsky used to refer to it, consent to government decisions. And here it's consent to a surveillance practice. But companies are so good at maneuvering almost everybody into consenting that they've taught people mostly not even to care how much they're being snooped on.
Okay.
And I think, therefore, we need to put an end to this manufacture of consent by saying you're not even allowed to ask for certain data if it isn't necessary for the basic service you're doing. So, for instance, if the basic service is providing transportation to people, we know that can be done without requiring them to identify who they are. Therefore, the law should say you're forbidden to try to find out who the passenger is.
Right, that's true. Hopefully,
Which means you have to accept cash payment too,
Yes,
because if the user has to pay through a non-anonymous method, you'd find that the service would find out who that user is. So they must be required to accept cash.
Yes, I think we need a lot of changes, a lot of positive changes to build the kind of society we really want to live in. It's the most interesting is how many people are willing to make that compromise, as you said,
Well, my mission is to teach more people to stand firm for their freedom, because given we're in the earlier stages of this fight, with the free software fight, maybe we're halfway there. There's a long way to go. That being so, the crucial thing is to teach more people to demand freedom and refuse to give it up.
Right.
So my long-term plan, since I can't make detailed long-term plans for 10 years from now or even 3 years from now, my long-term plan is do everything possible to show more people why they need to reject these digital things that subjugate people.
True. And hopefully we will see some changes in coming years. We are going through some revolutionary times right now, so maybe that will also happen. Anyway, thanks a lot for your time today. It was
I'd like to suggest that people look at GNU.org for more information about the GNU operating system and the free software movement, FSF.org for more information about how the Free Software Foundation campaigns for free software, and to sign up as a member. Please do join. We need your support. And also separately, Stallman.org. You'll find a menu listing various companies and why you shouldn't do business with them.
Thank you.
Including Amazon, Uber, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook is in trouble these days, so maybe something good will happen.
We need to teach people that the danger of surveillance is not limited to Facebook.
Yes, true.
The amount of disgust for Facebook is delightful to see, but in order for this to lead to a change that makes a real difference, we have to not just replace Facebook with something that treats people decently, but also a lot of other things, and they're not just companies.
Right. Thank you for your time today, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.
I hope so. Happy hacking.
Happy hacking.